This is the Voice Over Marketing Podcast, episode number 62. This is the voiceover. I love it. This is the Voice Over Marketing Podcast, episode number 63.
Hello and welcome. This is voiceover artist Kayla Jackson, and you're listening to the Voiceover Marketing Podcast with John Melly.
Hey there, it's John. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I do appreciate it. And thank you to Kayla Jackson for that great shout out at the beginning of the episode. Thank you so much. We have a ton of those intros that you have sent in, and I thank you. We continue to receive them. We've got a great show today, and we're going to dive right in. Not a lot of housekeeping. I just want to say that this episode is sponsored by the new VoiceOver Athlete Wellness Club, and you can join the VoiceOver Athlete Wellness Club with your first month at half price. If you are interested in learning more about that, go to voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. Look for the VoiceOver Athlete Wellness Club picture and logo and icon and yada, yada, yada link. Click on it. You get your first month at half price. I know you're going to love it. And if you sign up for my email list, shoot Mike an email at mike@johnmalley.com or sign up on the list on the right side of the screen at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. I will send you a free sample video that you can use right away, totally for free. Enough about that. I'm going to do an entire episode on the VoiceOver Athlete and all the wonderful things that we've got planned for you there and already in place. Definitely worth checking that out. My guest today is James Alburger. And if you don't know who James Alburger is, James is the author of The Art of Voice Acting. We had a fantastic conversation. This is over an hour long, and we even have video of it as well. There will be a link to the unedited video. My studio, his studio, and you can look at that at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com as well if you want to see that, behind the scenes, if you will. And you can check that out at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com, episode 63. So let's go in because we covered a lot of material, a lot of ideas. James Alburger. Well, hello, everyone. I am really excited about today's guest. My guest is James Alburger, and he has quite the reputation for delivering exceptional voiceover performances. He's also the teacher and owner of the Voice Acting Academy in San Diego, and he also provides continued support to his coaching clients through the Conductors Club. James is also an 11-time Emmy-winning audio producer, director, and copywriter, and he's a performance director for voiceover, stage, and video. He's also an author, and he's written what's really become the standard reference book for the voiceover industry, The Art of Voice Acting, and he's in the process of updating that book, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But other books that he's written include The Voice Actor's Guide to Professional Home Recording, How to Get Jobs for the Voices in Your Head, and I want to talk to you about that, and Get Your Act Together, Producing an Effective Magic Act to Music, and that sounds kind of cool too. He's also the co-executive producer of the VoiceOver International Creative Experience, which the acronym for that is perfectly enough, VOICE. And that was the world's first major convention for voice actors. And James has a high level of credibility in the voiceover community for exceptional community service, event producing, and fantastic content and coaching. And James, I could go on and on with all of your accomplishments. You've got more than a 35-year career in voiceover and surrounding activities. So let's just dive in. How are you? And thank you for being on the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. With an introduction like that, I think we might as well just wrap it up right now. I mean, you pretty much said it all.
There you go. Yeah. And he didn't even pay me.
So
we're doing.
What else can you ask for?
We're doing something a little different on this podcast. James was kind enough to offer the use of his Zoom account, which you use in coaching some of your voice coaching clients. So depending on how this all turns out on my end and his end and technology, we'll have something of a slightly different presentation for listeners of the Voiceover Marketing Podcast.
Well, interesting note about that. Back around when Penny and I were producing Voice 2014, we needed after we had done 2012. Mm-hmm. We realized we need a much better and much more efficient way of keeping our staff in touch with one another. So I was researching all sorts of different video conferencing systems and looked at a whole bunch of them, tested a lot of them, and some were okay, some were less than okay. And I came across Zoom. And at the time, nobody was using Zoom. Mm-hmm. It was just getting started, I think, and maybe been around for a couple of years. But in terms of the voiceover community, nobody was using Zoom. So I found it. I started using it, and it was just amazing. It's an incredible platform. And started introducing it to a number of other, well, of course, to all our staff for the convention. Mm-hmm. And then a number of other people started picking it up. So I feel responsible for getting Zoom into the voiceover community. Yeah. Because just about all the major video conferences like Wovo's, their meetings are all on Zoom, and Ganguza uses Zoom for everything she does. And I mean, the list goes on, but a lot of people are now using Zoom. Yeah. And, I only regret that I don't have a piece of their pie.
No kidding, huh? Yeah, I think I've done a couple of things with John Florian from VoiceOver Extra, and he's used Zoom for some of his
John
webinars.
Uses Zoom as well, yeah.
Yeah. So a pioneer in many ways for the voiceover community. So how... everybody likes to hear this story. How did this all happen? You talked about voices in your head in your bio there that I kind of cherry picked from at the beginning here. I think anybody in voiceover probably has a few of those rattling around from an early age. But give us a quick history of your story and how this all started for you.
Well, my story goes back to when I was like 12 years old. Yeah, I'm just a geeky kid. But I got interested in magic back then. Oh. And got on, I was performing on, for our family audiences. I'm just geeky 12-year-old. I had no idea what I was doing. I joined a couple of magic clubs. So I learned a lot. But when I was performing, I discovered I was really uncomfortable performing in front of an audience. I didn't like talking in front of an audience because I didn't know what I was doing. So that was at the period, I'm going to date myself now, because that was in the early 1960s. And Ed Sullivan was on TV, and Ed Sullivan loved magicians, and every week had a magician on his show. And I'm watching Ed Sullivan religiously because I loved the magic. And I noticed, wait a minute, these guys aren't talking. They're working to music. Oh. So I figured out, well, hey, I like music. I have some records. My dad's an engineer, so he helped me figure out how to get my record player into the tape recorder. And I started recording some records. And inside a box of 3M magnetic reel-to-reel tape, there was instructions on how to splice tape using a pair of scissors, a grease pencil, and Scotch tape.
Yep.
So I taught myself to edit music at 12.
Oh, good for you.
And that led me into radio and television when I got into college, working in local radio stations at San Diego State, where I came down for my last 2 years of college. I ended up being production manager and operations manager of the campus radio station, working for odd jobs around campus on other things, audio. Graduated from State, worked in Hollywood at a recording studio for about a year or so, then came back to San Diego and got into the then ABC station in town, which was KCST. We're talking now about 1973.
Okay.
And got myself into a position of doing audio for their evening newscasts. Well, over the years, that ended up to be a 25-year career with what then became the NBC station. Yeah. There was a whole affiliate shift in San Diego in the early 70s, but that's another story. But I was basically with NBC in San Diego for 25 years as an audio producer. I supervised 6 other audio people, taught them everything that they know, not everything I know, but everything that they know about what they needed to do for running the station for sound. Yeah. Also directing 25 newscasts a week, directing voice talent on a regular basis. So a lot of my experience was gained during those 25 years with NBC. And then I left in 1998 and went freelance and started teaching voice acting. Started my first book, the first edition of The Art of Voice Acting actually started as notes for a class I was teaching locally. Mm-hmm. And that took on a life of its own. And I was at a showbiz expo in Hollywood and found a publisher and said, hey, wait a minute, they publish books. I'm writing what could be a book. Maybe I should talk. And I did. I talked to them, left them my card. The publisher was not there, but called me back the following week and asked for 4 chapters, and the rest is history.
That's great. And you're working on what, the 5th or 6th edition of it now?
This is coming up on the 6th edition. It's been on about a 4-year cycle. I think that's probably going to shift to a 5-year cycle.
Wow.
But yeah, this is the 6th edition that's coming up, and all things going well, it should be published, I think, in March of next year. So we're a little over a year away.
Wow, congratulations on that. That's fantastic. And it really is the reference guide for voice talent. And I think I remember when that book, maybe the 2nd edition came out, I think was when I first got exposed to it. And I mentioned we had a couple of conversations before this actual session, and I told you that my wife had gotten me a Dawes Butler DVD that I think you had produced about his whole life and career and all the characters that he...
And Dawes Butler, Voice Magician.
Yeah. I love that DVD. I still have it. And man, what a talented thing. How did that come about? Just for my own selfish reason.
Well, actually, I had nothing to do with the production of that.
Oh, okay.
I was at a Comic-Con one year, and I was standing in line waiting to meet some of the panel, and this guy in front of me was talking to somebody else about this DVD that he had produced about Dawes Butler. And apparently he had June Foray, Dawes Butler, and a whole bunch of other major voice talent that he had actually interviewed. The only video he had actually produced was the Dawes Butler video.
Oh, okay.
And so I got to talking to him and set up a kind of a resale arrangement with him so that I could take that DVD and kind of get it out to the community and share profits on that.
There you go.
And he agreed with that, and that's how that came about.
Okay, very cool. So you're working on the 6th edition of the book. That can't be the only thing that you're doing. I mean, you obviously teach quite a bit. You coach online. Before we get into that, actually, there are a couple of questions I wanted to ask you. We have a wide range of listeners to the podcast. We have folks that are seasoned veterans. We have people who have been at this for a number of years. And then we have quite a few people who are, I have a group on Facebook, the Voiceover Marketing Podcast group on Facebook, and I typically ask them a couple of things. How long have you been at this? And a lot of people will say, just getting started. I guess we'll ask the question for both groups. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you see new folks getting into the business making? And then if it's different, what's a mistake that you see folks who've been at it a while making? Because you have a 40,000-foot view.
Kind of, yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the people who are just getting started.
Yeah.
There are there's not just one thing that I'm seeing. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of things. One thing that I do see is, oddly enough, even with all the information that's out there about voiceover, there are still some people, and I'll occasionally get calls from these folks, and they've always wanted to do voiceover. They've loved doing funny voices and characters and that sort of thing. And they, for one reason or another, think that voiceover is easy money, that it's an easy gig to get into, and that they're going to be a success overnight.
Right.
So, I've got to, squelch that right away and, tell them this is how the business really works. And if you're in it for the money, you're in it for the wrong reasons. So that's one thing that I see occasionally. Yeah. Another thing that I see is people who they're so desperate to get work in voiceover that they'll take a workshop. Sometimes it's only a 3-hour introductory thing.
Yeah.
And then they immediately figure, okay, well, I know what I'm doing. And they'll go out there and spend a couple of $1,000s on producing a demo, which is absolute trash.
Yeah.
and nobody's going to listen to it.
Right.
Because, everything on their demo sounds exactly the same. They have the same inflections, the same attitudes, the same tone of voice on every clip in the demo. Okay, there's maybe some changes in music that will identify a different track, but without the music, it sounds like one continuous same.
Right.
So producing that demo way before they're ready is one of the biggest mistakes that I see.
Right. I've just to kind of piggyback on that, I'm sure you've run into it as well. That's one of the hardest things to tell somebody that finally, when I get somebody who comes to me for coaching, and I'm sure you've run into it as well, is that they say, this isn't working. And you have to say, well, yes, I can understand why it isn't working. And here's why that demo isn't working. And that's hard because, at least for me, because somebody's, like you said, spent a couple $1,000s on between the workshop and the demo that they got, and you don't want to discourage them, but at the same time, you need to be real with them and say, this, and it's a tough situation to be in, but
that can be tough, but personally, I'd rather be straightforward and honest rather than fluff their feathers and.
Right.
That's not going to do any good.
Right. No, I agree with you. It's just, it's like, here's some bad news, and you don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but you have to if you want.
One of the things that I have found, though, is at least for the people that have contacted me, I've had several students who've been through a couple of the demo mills out there.
Yeah.
And if, for a newbie that's listening to this, if you don't know what a demo mill is, let me just briefly describe that so you know what to watch out for and avoid like the plague.
Right.
What'll happen is you'll see an advertisement listing for usually it's a 3-hour introductory class, very often held on a college campus. Why do they hold these on a college campus? Because that gives an illusion of credibility. Because it's on a college campus, it must be legitimate. Not necessarily so. So go ahead and take the class. They're usually about $35 to $50 or so. It's a 3-hour introduction. And there's a lot of good information. The information you'll get is legit. It's great information. However, you can get about 90% of that for free, or check out a book at the library and you'll get the same stuff, or just go to Facebook and look up some of the voiceover groups, and all that information is out there.
Or read your book.
Or read my book, yeah. But it's out there, and you can get it for free. You don't have to go to this introductory class. Now, what they will do, some of these, and they work a little bit differently sometimes, but what they will often do is they will record everybody in the class. But you'll get minimal coaching. You may do 2 or 3 takes of something, sometimes just one recording, and very little coaching, if any, and you don't get to take your recording with you. You go home. Within a couple of days after that little introductory class, you'll get a phone call, and they will tell you you're the next best voice since Don LaFontaine, and you really need to consider taking their full weekend workshop, which is usually going to be in another city, and it's going to cost usually a couple $1,000 for their full weekend workshop. So now you've got to travel, you've got to book a hotel room, and you're paying a couple of grand for their workshop. When you take their workshop, they will upsell you at the end of that to producing a demo. Trust me, nobody is ready to produce a demo after taking one workshop.
Right. Yeah.
It just, your demo is not going to be competitive because you just don't know what you're doing. You have no experience. So, I mean, it's kind of like saying, okay, I drive a car. I drive to work every day. I think I'll go compete in the Indianapolis 500.
Right.
I don't think so. You're not going to survive past the first 100 yards. It's it's the same thing with voiceover. If you produce your demo too soon, you're not competitive, and it's a relatively small community, and especially amongst the talent buyers and the agents. and they do talk to one another. So, if you're cranking out an absolutely horrible demo, you only have one chance to make a good first impression.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And we're not going to mention any specific names, but whenever I see the demo and I had it done at someplace, you're like, oh no.
Yep. That's my response. And I've had a number of students who have been through one or more of those demo mills. And there are actually 3 companies out there that I have found that have that same business model.
Right.
They do the introductory class at a credible location, then they upsell to their full-blown workshop, and then they upsell to a demo production.
Right.
And some of them even will tell you that they're going to support you through their website, and they'll help you create your marketing plan and all of that. Well, of course, that's going to be for more fees. So by the time you're done, you're investing $10,000 to $15,000 with these people.
Well, yeah.
And chances are you're going to get nowhere. So
other than frustrated, yeah.
If you see that, that should raise some red flags.
That was a really good overview. I didn't know about the college campus thing. That's an interesting twist. I've heard about the hotel room or something like that, or the conference center or something like that. But the college campus is an interesting twist to that.
That is an interesting twist. Well, I used to teach back in this is 1997. That's when I first started teaching. I was working with the Learning Annex, which is back then was an international, or not international, but a national adult education extended learning type of a program.
Yep.
And based out of San Francisco, and they were very big here in San Diego. So I started teaching with them, and it's a short 3-hour introductory classes, but every instructor with Learning Annex was independent. And so it wasn't one of these manipulative kind of things. Mm-hmm. And of course, what I did is I gave an introductory class, but I recorded everybody in class. Everybody took their recordings with them at the end of the class. I directed at least 3 takes, and I gave direction between each take. So from their first take to their third take, there was a noticeable improvement in about 98% of the people that were in the class. And the whole idea was to give them enough information and to let them make an intelligent, educated decision as to whether or not this is something they wanted to pursue. And if they did, then okay, don't take a workshop yet. If you're really interested, here's my book. There are other books out there. Go learn something first. And then if you're still interested, call me. Here's my card. Here's the information. Here's my website. And I teach workshops in San Diego. So call me if you're interested in learning more. But it was never a hard sell, never a manipulative kind of a you're the next greatest voice since Don LaFontaine. Oh my gosh, you need to be doing voiceover. No, that's just BS.
Yeah, that's not cool. But by giving them the direction, you gave them a taste of an actual recording session and what will take place with a director and a writer and the client and all that. So that's great. So that's some of the folks new to the industry. What would you say to some seasoned veterans? What do you think? What do you see? Mistakes?
Well, with seasoned veterans, they've already, with the seasoned vets, it's not so much in the performance side of things, although I have talked with a lot of professionals, both as actors and voice talent. And one of the things that I've discovered there is that most professionals realize that they need some form of ongoing training. Yeah. Or at least a refresher every couple of years. Yeah. And I know a lot of major movie star actors who, when they're not shooting a film, if they get to New York, they're taking a class. They're in LA, they're taking classes of one form or another. Right. So the refresher course for performance is, I think, something valuable. And I've had a lot of working pros come back and take my P.I.E. workshops, sometimes multiple times.
What's a P.I.E. workshop?
My P.I.E, that's my performance intensive event.
Okay.
Folks, we can talk about that later. But
I just didn't know what the alphabet soup there.
But in terms of the seasoned pros or experience, let me just put it into the experienced category.
Sure.
The thing that I see happening there is in how they approach their marketing. One of the myths, if you will, for people who are just getting started is that once they've got some training, they can join a pay-to-play site. They're going to get hundreds of auditions and they'll start getting work. The pay-to-plays don't work that way. In fact, the way that I approach the pay-to-play sites is that consider your $300 or whatever the dues is per year. Consider that the tuition for ongoing education, because you're going to get a series of scripts that are real world scripts. You can work with them, you can play with them, you can audition with them and send them up. If you get a gig, wonderful, but don't expect that. Just use those scripts as an opportunity to expand your skills and to really hone your craft.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And don't expect anything more from the pay-to-plays, because unless you are already experienced and you've got a couple of years under your belt, chances are you're not going to get any gigs out of that. It's a numbers game. And I had one of my students, he actually tracked the number of auditions that he did through one of the pay-to-plays, and he had 849 auditions before he landed his first job.
Wow.
And then after that, the numbers, that was his tipping point, and things started to change after that point, because by that time he had figured out the system. He knew what he needed to do
Okay.
to get his auditions heard through the pay-to-plays. He knew how to market himself. He was, so he was using those 849 auditions to really hone his craft and learn what he was doing.
Well, that's valuable.
Yeah. So it's, but that's the value of the pay-to-plays, is you're going to get real world scripts to play with.
Mm-hmm.
Some are brilliantly written. Others are just trash. They're horrible. But, they're real world. I mean, that's
right.
how it is. So, I just, don't expect to get a lot out of the pay-to-plays. But in terms of somebody who's got some experience, most people who have some experience realize that the pay-to-plays are not the way to go. But it's their marketing and how they're branding their website, how they're branding their voiceover work. I see a lot of people with some experience who are trying to be all things to all talent buyers, rather than focusing on a specific niche to begin with. And then once you've got a foothold in a niche, now you've got a revenue stream coming in. Now you can start to expand.
I'm glad you said that. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
But people try to be all things to all people. They'll create and they'll do 3 or 4 demos. They'll have an audiobook demo, a commercial demo, a character voice demo, a telephony demo. There's about 35 different genres out there, and they'll do a half dozen or more different demos and expect something to land them a job. It's not going to happen because you haven't got your brand established, and nobody knows who you are, and they don't care.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
So the marketing and the branding is probably the major issue that I see. Now, okay, let's go up to the more experienced people who've been in this for a few years. They've already worked out some of their kinks. For some of those people, their problem is time, because they've got business coming in. And so their challenge is in continuing their marketing to bring in more business.
Right.
And that can become a real challenge. So fortunately, we have some really wonderful people in this business who are not specifically voice talent, but who support the voice actors in the areas of branding and marketing and, those other things that help you get the business.
Right.
So there's a handful of people out there who do that. But these are the kinds of people that you're going to discover as you gain experience in the business, as you start to network with the social media networks or go to the conventions. You'll start to discover who these people are and what they offer. And when the time is right, call them.
There you go. Now, are you continuing to produce Voice, the show? conference?
No, we've the Voice Convention is. I like to say that it's on hiatus.
Okay.
I still hold the name. I still hold the URL for the website. We're just not producing the event. The last convention was in 2014.
Yeah.
Little history on Voice. Back around 2006, probably October, November 2006, my partner, Penny Abshire, came into my office and said, we need to do something to bring the community together. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And she said, well, we need to do something big, like a convention or something. Even plumbers have conventions, and there is no voiceover convention.
Yeah.
Back at that time, this is 2006, the only thing around were a couple of small weekend things. And there were only a couple of them around the country at that time. And so we got to thinking and said, okay, let's mull that over, figure out what we can do. Well, around that same time, one of my students called me and said, hey, I know of there's a teacher in San Diego, another voiceover coach, who's teaming up with a guy from Salt Lake City area. And they're planning on doing something in Las Vegas. And maybe we could talk to them and make it, a collaborative type of thing. So I got connected up with the other two, and one of whom I've known since the early 70s, my early TV career. We got together and created the first Voice Convention. And we held that at the Palace Station in Las Vegas in 2007. And it took us about 6 months to put the whole thing together.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. And we had 135 people from 12 countries.
Oh, wow.
Which blew me away when I started looking at that. Really? 12 countries right here? Wow.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So, that was huge. But it was 135 people. We were all in one room for 2 days. It got hot. We're in Las Vegas, supposedly in a non-smoking hotel. Not. We were right above the ballroom, or the meeting area was directly above the casino. And it was a smoking casino. So all the smoke just wafted up right through the walls and everything. So people were coughing by the end of the weekend. It was just not a good thing.
Yeah.
But the convention itself was hugely successful.
That's great.
And the energy was amazing. So it didn't take us long to figure out that, we might be onto something here. So we started reevaluating things, and we decided, okay, we need to do another voice convention, but Las Vegas is not the right venue. It's not the right city for it. Mm-hmm. It's too far away from any major voice talent to bring them in to teach. I had 13 coaches and major people at 2007. We had Pat Fraley, I had Rodney Salisbury, I had Betty Zoller. We had, just a whole bunch of really, really talented high-end voice talent coaches. Yeah. And Don LaFontaine was our special guest, and I had the honor of being on stage, and Penny and I interviewed Don LaFontaine for about an hour, and it was just a treat.
Sure, yeah.
He was a wonderful man. But anyhow, so we decided we needed to do another convention. So we started shopping, and we realized it's got to be in LA. Has to be in Los Angeles. That's the hub of the voiceover world.
Right.
It's got to be in LA. And that's where we took it. And we ended up holding the convention at the Century Plaza in Beverly Hills. And we did 2008 and 2010 in Beverly Hills. And our attendance jumped from 135 up to almost 400.
Oh, wow. That's really good.
Between 2007 and 2008. And then after 2008, what we discovered was when we did 2010, which was also at Beverly Hills, our attendance was dropping a little bit. And what we discovered was, as we started researching, we discovered that, oh, wait a minute, there are some other mini conventions that are popping up around the country.
Oh.
So, obviously people had seen what we were doing and had started their own things.
Yeah.
And by the time we got to 2014, our attendance had dropped considerably because the market had become diluted.
Right.
And with the overhead that we had in producing an event in Los Angeles, it's not the same as VO Atlanta, because when VO Atlanta happens, they're at a hotel or an airport hotel, and the overhead in Atlanta is a lot less than the overhead in Los Angeles.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So, much higher profit margin, and those people can afford to do things that we couldn't even consider just because of the costs. So with the market dilution being what it was, and with so many other events out there, Penny and I just decided, let's just put the convention on hiatus for a couple of years and see what happens. And, if we want to bring it back, we'll bring it back, but we'll bring it back as something else. Because if it's one thing we're innovators. With Voice 2007 in Las Vegas, our whole purpose was to bring the voiceover community together. That was our goal. We weren't in it to make money. We wanted to cover our costs, of course.
Sure,
but,
yeah. Yeah.
Our main objective was to bring the voiceover community together. Well, between the 5 voice conventions, we did exactly that. And we were totally satisfied that we've met our goals and objectives. And so we had no problems just saying, okay, we've done what we set out to do. Voice was a huge success every year that we produced it. It's become too expensive and too stressful, and there's just too much that needs to go into it. And Penny decided she was going to retire from voiceover anyhow, so she did that in 2015. And so the timing was right for us just to stop producing that convention. And not to say that there won't be something else with the voice name attached to it. Okay. Because I have some ideas rolling around in my head, but nothing is formulated, has solidified yet.
That's cool. It's interesting you're talking about this, because it sounds like, your voiceover career business has evolved over time, trying out different things. Do you think, as is mine, and I think I'm in the process of doing that myself with some different things, do you ever wrestle with that, or did you ever find any kind of self-limiting thought of, geez, this isn't my idiom, so to speak? Am I going too far outside? Or as long as there's some tangent to what it is that you're doing, the creativity, are you cool with that? Or do you just like, you know what, I'm doing my own thing here, I'm just going to make it all happen? Or do you need to have some kind of, I guess, continuity or some thread that runs through all of it?
I'm pretty much the kind of guy that I'll go with the flow.
Okay. Yeah. So
I don't have to have a solid line from A to B to C to D. I don't work that way.
Yeah.
I consider myself more of a creative. So, and creatives, for those of you out there who are creatives, you know that people will often consider you fragmented, because you'll flit from one thing to another. And sometimes there's no continuity whatsoever from their perspective. Yeah. For you, it's totally clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can see the connections between this and that and, whatever it is. Yeah. And other people look at that and say, really? How do you get that? Yeah. They don't get it. They're not creatives. I don't know what it is, but it's the way our brains work. Yeah. So I don't need to have that continuity. I do know that if I'm not looking or experimenting or playing with other ideas, that I'm stagnating. Yeah. Yep. So, since we wrapped up the last voice convention, I've shifted my focus back to one of my really true loves, which is sound and working with audio. So I'm still doing voiceover. Don't get me wrong there. I still love voiceover, and my book is a huge success, and that we'll talk about that in a little bit. But my original love was audio production, editing, sound design. And so what I'm doing now is I'm doing a lot of work in the film and video community here in San Diego. Nice. So I do location sound. I can, I've got my full location rig, which I can roll out and do 8-track digital recordings on location. Worked on a couple of films last year, which have had high accolades in a lot of the film festivals. One of them we shot for 2 days on the USS Midway. You just don't get on the Midway to shoot.
Oh, I've been on that. My wife and I took a tour about 3 years ago on that, and that was amazing.
Yeah, it's an amazing ship.
Yeah.
And we shot on there for 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was an amazing experience. There's a clip of the films I've worked on. If you go to I believe it's just alburger.com is the sound for video and film part.
Oh, okay, cool.
But yeah, alburger.com, and there's some clips of recent projects I've worked on.
We'll put some links to this in the show notes.
I'm sorry? We'll
put links to all of these things in the show notes for the episode. So yeah, you can shoot me an email afterward with all those, and we'll just...
Got it.
Yeah.
One of the films I worked on is called American Socialist, and it's the life and times of Eugene Victor Debs, who was very big in socialism and the unions back in the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
And some folks here in town collaborated and produced that film, and I did all the audio post-production on it. Also, I did 9 character voices for the quotations. It's a documentary, basically.
Oh.
They had a lot of quotations. So I did 9 character voices. The original edit of the film was 7 hours.
Wow.
And it got re-edited down to an hour and a half. So it's 90 minutes in its theatrical release form. And it's doing the circuits now. In fact, it opens here in San Diego and next week, I think.
Oh, cool.
But it's going the rounds in theatrical distribution. So, I mean, the producers sold this thing, and it's out there in national distribution now.
Great.
And it's going to DVD sometime later this year, I think. But, you know, those are the kinds of things that I've been working on, a lot of audio and post. Another film I just recently worked on was shot about 2 years ago. And I think when they shot it, they only had access to one shotgun microphone. So there are scenes where they're in a classroom and the actor speaking is across the room on a wide shot, and that's the audio they use. So it's very echoey and, you know, difficult to hear. And then they cut to a close-up of somebody else whose the mic is only about 15 inches away. So they're right on mic, and it cuts back and forth. So the perspective and the audio continuity is
tough.
Non-existent. So for that film, the director asked me, you know, was there anything we can do to fix this? And I said, well, yeah, we need to bring all the actors in and ADR the entire film, which is what we did. And now I'm in the process of building an A/B comparison really to show what ADR can do.
Wow.
Difference. So yeah, it's quite amazing. It's a whole new film.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would have to be. Yeah.
Yeah. Completely new film. All the audio continuity is very consistent. I redid a lot of the sound effects. A lot of Foley is added that was not there before. Remixed all the music, remixed the whole thing, and the director was ecstatically happy.
Oh, I mean, and that's painstaking work too. I mean,
yeah. It took total hours on that production was over 40 hours.
Wow. And how long's the feature?
That was a 20-minute short.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So 20 to 1.
It's a lot of work, but it pays off. But, you know, that's one of the things I really love doing is working with sound like that and music editing, audio editing, anything with production.
Wow. That's really cool. That's really cool. You know, you were talking about your book. So talk to us about the book. You're in the process of the 6th edition there, and you've also talked about this P.I.E workshop as well. And I know that teaching and courses are another passion of yours. You talk to us a little bit about the art of voice acting and some of the things we can expect in the 6th edition?
Sure. The first edition came out in 1998. And that was a result of, as I said, the Learning Annex notes took on a life of their own and evolved into the book. It was, I think, 235 pages for the first edition. It was an immediate success. Publisher signed me up for a second edition, gave me more pages,
nice.
Which was not, and a CD for the second edition. first edition didn't have any support materials. So the second, third, and fourth editions all had a CD that went with it. And the fifth edition, instead of doing a CD, we tried something different, which was using QR codes to link over to web content. Well, that didn't work. So there will be no QR codes in the sixth edition.
They kind of came and went, didn't they? Those QR codes, I mean, you still see them every once in a while, but they're a neat idea, but they never really took off or lasted.
Yeah. There's just too many variables in there, I think.
Yeah.
So anyhow, with the sixth edition, the book is about 500 pages.
Wow.
I keep expanding it every year. I keep updating all the chapters. I literally, right now, I think I'm on chapter 6 or 7. And I go through and I literally reread every chapter, make adjustments, updates. If there's a trend that is affected, that I talk about, and there's been some shift or something, that gets updated. So I do that for every chapter in the book. Plus, with every edition of the book, I contact voiceover professionals and solicit some contributions or for material that it might either go into a chapter as a supplement, as what I'm talking about in a particular chapter, or there's a whole chapter at the back of the book called Tips, Tricks, and Studio Stories, where I have a lot of the contributed content from the professional voiceover community, where they'll talk about marketing, business, performance, demos. I mean, anything in the voiceover realm can be discussed. And what I find is interesting is when I get the contributed content from these pros, everything that they're saying completely supports what I've talked about earlier in the book. So it works out to be very nice because I'll talk about something maybe in chapter 9 or 10. And by the time that reader gets down to the tips and tricks chapter and they'll start reading something from one of the pros, it reinforces what they've already learned. Right. So it works out to be very nice. Plus these are the pros. I mean, these are some of the top guys in the business.
Yeah.
So right now I'm kind of putting that list together and reaching out to some of the pros. And I've got a handful already lined up who are contributing. John Florian will be contributing.
Oh, great.
Dave Rossier from World Voices will be contributing something. Deb Monroe from Canada, who is just an amazing character voice actor. She'll be contributing some things. Off the top of my head, I can't remember others, but I've got about 4 or 5 others already lined up.
That's great.
But if there's any pros who are listening and you'd like to contribute something to my book, you can learn all about that by going to my website, which is voiceacting.com. And then under the shop section, the very first item is the art of voice acting. And just drag over that. And then there's a sub drop down that comes off of that, which is called AOVA Next. So it's about the next edition.
Got it.
So you just click on that, and that gives everything you need to know about contributing or being part of the next edition of my book.
That's great. That's great.
And one thing about that, for the information and the content that is in previous chapters, that just doesn't go away, because I take the things from the previous editions of the books. That goes into a section of my website called AOVA Extras.
Oh, cool.
So once you might have the 6th edition of my book. Well, if you go to my website, you can access all or most of the content that was specialized or unique to one of the previous 4 editions or 5 editions.
Very, very cool. That's great.
Including all the audio.
Including all the audio too? Is that what you said?
Including the audio because I include a lot of scripts in the book.
Yep.
And what I like, if at all possible, I want to have a recording of the script so that, the reader of the book can go to the website and they can actually hear, well, this is how it sounded. This was how the real version of the spot was done, or whatever it is, so that they have some kind of a baseline upon which to hone their own performance and make their choices.
It's really interesting you just said that, because I had a client last night that I've been working with for a few years now, and we were working on copy timing, and we pulled out something that I had written a while ago, and I had him working on the copy, and then I said, you know what? I wrote this with my voice in mind, so let me just lay that down for you. And because he was doing a fine job with it, but I wanted to give him a sense of more that you can do with just, how you can work with the words. That's just characters on a piece of paper, but you can pull so much out, and really the word I used with him was kind of grind out more emotion and meaning from just verbalizing the text, versus just verbalizing the text. And so I recorded it for him, and, I messed it up a few times, and I stopped and looked at him and said, let me try that line again. And for him, he said, what was really interesting was that, okay, I saw that you didn't just go through it, but it was valuable for him to get the writer's voice, if you will, to hear what the writer had in their head when they put the words on the page that you're hoping to create for them. If you're not writing it, if you're not also the writer and performer, but right. Also for him to get a sense of, well, okay, this, it's not just one take, it's a process.
Yes.
So it's interesting that you, and I think that's an interesting thing. I think a lot of folks think that they got to go in and read the script and not make any mistakes, and they feel bad if they don't get it right, but quote unquote.
Well, there's one of the concepts that I teach in my workshops, and I talk about it in the book, is, and I don't know if I coined the phrase or if it's already been out there, but I describe it as character has precedence over copy.
Oh, okay.
Which basically means if you're working with a script, I hesitate to say reading a script because we're not just readers, we are performers and we're actors.
Right.
So if you're working with a script and you see that the script is written in a certain way that says that there thing over there, the way that the words are written almost mandates some kind of a dialect.
Yeah.
Because it's that there. And I have some scripts that I use in the workshop that are written that way, and you'd be surprised how many people don't pick it up. They don't see it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things about experience is once you've got some experience, you'll begin to, you'll see those things in the copy and the way that they're written. But even without that, even if the copy is written totally straight, your interpretation might be something that could be really interesting if you throw a certain accent into it, or you change the phrasing, or you move punctuation marks around, or you come up with a character that talks with a certain tone of voice or an attitude.
Or texture. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the texture. It's the subtleties of what's going on in the way the character you're going to become plays with those words. So what I find is a lot of people will be working a script, and there's like you said, they're so afraid to make any changes in the copy because it's not going to be what's on the script. Well, okay, but character has precedence over the copy. So if your character's more comfortable uncontracting or contracting, say the script is written, that is all well and good. And the character and the interpretation you have is contracted. Say, well, that's all well and good. Then contract it.
Right. Yep.
Don't feel like you have to get stuck in the way the script is written, because the script is only written the way it is because it's on a piece of paper.
Right. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's why it's punctuated the way it is. That's why the words are written the way it is. Yeah. It's grammatically correct for print, but as real people and in a conversational world, we don't talk the way things are in print.
Right.
We have a totally different style and delivery.
Writing for the eye versus writing for the ear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how many people do not know how to write for the eye. Well, for the ear, rather.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, well, I fixed it.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about what goes on in your course. Tell me a little bit more about what happens in your courses.
Well, with my P.I.E. workshop, first off, I've been teaching voice acting since 1997. And my original workshop was an 8-week workshop, 3 hours a week for 8 weeks, and really comprehensive. And I had a complete set of notes that I had evolved and created for the workshop. And over the years, things have changed, schedules have changed, people's availability has changed. So 8 weeks was no longer viable. So what I did is I changed everything into a weekend workshop. So it's 2 days, 2 intensive days, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on a Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
And that entire time is focused on performance. I don't talk about business. There's some smatterings about business that might crop in from time to time, but the real focus is on performance. The last hour or so on Sunday afternoon, I devote that to really getting questions answered, talking about the business if that comes up, but that's not the purpose of that weekend.
Right.
I do have roughly 6 hours of webinars that Penny and I put together that support the whole workshop. The webinars cover all the lecture material that we used to do live in the workshop.
Oh, okay.
And by taking all that lecture stuff out of the workshop and putting it into webinars, people can access the webinar whenever they want.
Right.
Because once you've signed up for my workshop, you got access to the webinars. So they can go and they can look at the webinars, they can study that, they can go back and get reviews. And all that material is, it's not going to be covered for the most part during the workshop.
But they're getting, I'm sorry.
Occasionally I'll review some of it. There are certain things that just need to be reviewed, especially some of the techniques.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the lecture and the webinars and the whole weekend workshop is really devoted to performance. Everybody in the class is on mic for usually 15 to 20 minutes per session. So these are not your quickie on mic for 5 minutes with, a couple of short takes and some quick direction and okay, thank you, next.
Right.
It's not that kind of workshop. This is intensive.
Yeah.
And, my students will vouch for that because some of them are exhausted when they get off that mic.
First thing that popped into my head, I was like, wow, 2 8-hour days. Because if you're not actually on mic, you're probably also getting value from watching other people be directed and recording and all that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And everybody has a Dropbox folder or it's a shared Dropbox account. And everybody's recordings go immediately into the Dropbox folder. So not only do you get your recordings, but you get everybody else's sessions as well.
Oh, okay.
So you've got basically all the mic sessions for that weekend workshop accessible. So you can go back and you can review them. In fact, I tell my students right at the very beginning, if you hear a specific tip or an idea or some piece of direction that I'm giving somebody else who's on mic, and you want to remember that and know where it is, just, holler out, what's the time on this one? And I'll tell you. Okay. Because I've got the running time for every recording. I say, okay, that's at about 12 and a half minutes, 12:30 in on, Steve's recording.
Right.
And they can make a note and then they can go back and listen to it and track it down. So I'm very big on making the workshop as valuable to everybody who attends as I possibly can.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, I've been to, some really high-end workshops where the only thing you get when you leave is the experience you had while you were there.
Oh, yeah.
And your coaching sessions aren't recorded, or if they are recorded, you only get your recordings. You don't get everybody else's. Huh. And half the value of a workshop, especially something like P.I.E, is being able to learn from listening to how I'm directing other students in the class and what are they doing, and then figuring out, oh, hey, if you did it this way, it would sound like this, and maybe that might be a better alternative.
If it sounds really cool, and you do those out in the San Diego area?
Yeah, I teach P.I.E. The performance intensive event I teach it actually at my home in San Diego.
Oh, okay.
And I've done a couple of them online, which I called Pie in the Sky. And I thought that was a clever little name for an online workshop.
That's really good.
But I did a couple of those, and what I discovered was that it's not the same relationship. I don't have the same relationship with my students. They don't have the same relationship with me. And part of P.I.E. is creating the camaraderie and the connection between the students who are there. Mm-hmm. And you just can't do that with an online workshop.
No, you can't.
It just can't happen.
No.
And with an online workshop, it's too easy for somebody, if I'm working with you and there are 6 other people on the workshop, well, they'll know that I'm going to be working with you for the next 10 or 15 minutes. So it's too easy for them just to get up and leave and
flake out,
turn their camera off, mute their mic, and they go off and play with the kids or play with a dog or whatever for 10 minutes, and then they come back and they've missed a whole bunch of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But, it's the distractions are just too easy.
Yeah.
For an online workshop. So I've decided, okay, I'm not doing it online anymore. I'll only do it exclusively in San Diego, or if somebody wants to bring me to another city, I'll happily do that. If we can work out all the details, no problem.
Right.
I'll even profit share on the tuitions if somebody brings me in.
Very good.
So, and they get to attend the class for free. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like the travel tour arrangement.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah,
kinda.
That sounds good.
And I've done that for a couple of places, and it's worked out well.
That's great. If people wanted to learn more about the schedule that you have for these workshops and tuition and all that, where would they go to find out that information? I mean, have you got one coming up? Or the thing with the podcast is it's evergreen, and people will be downloading this now, but they'll also be downloading it 6 months from now. So I suppose you can date the copy if you want.
We're in April of 2018.
Right.
And I do have a P.I.E. workshop coming up in May of 2018. So next month I have one. I usually only schedule the workshops about every other month, and usually in January, March, and May for sure. And then once we get into the summer months, it gets a little wonky.
Yeah.
So, I'm after the one in May, I don't have anything scheduled for the rest of this year just yet. There will be some coming up, but I don't have those planned yet. However, that said, for anybody that ever wants to learn about the workshop schedule, just go to voiceacting.com. There is a link for the calendar. So I always put the workshop events on the calendar, and right on the homepage of the workshop or on the website, there's an announcement, the big link that says, okay, next P.I.E. workshop, and it gives the dates.
Excellent.
Just click on that link, and that goes over to the full page that describes what P.I.E. is all about.
Very good. James, this is coming up on an hour, and I just want to thank you for all the time and information that you've shared with us today. Are there any other closing thoughts that you want to share, or any?
Well, yeah, we could go for another hour on those.
I know we could. I'm having a lot of fun. I mean, this is great.
But not really. I think, just the main thing would be for anybody that's interested in getting into voiceover, do your homework first.
Right.
Learn some things about what this business is all about. Join some of the social media groups. There's a ton of them on Facebook. There are meetup groups all around the country for voiceover and voice acting. And there are lots of books on the market. Besides, my book is out there, and there are lots of other books on voiceover. Some are great, some are not so much, but they've all got something useful in them. And the way I look at it is, whether you're taking a workshop or reading a book, if you get only one usable piece of information out of it that's going to advance your work or your performance or your business, it was worth it.
I completely agree. Yeah, I've been very fortunate in taking a number of workshops with Rodney Salisbury, whom you mentioned, and Pat Fraley. I've taken a number with him, and
yeah, Pat's great.
Yeah, and
another coach, if you ever have an opportunity to take a workshop, is Bob Bergen.
Oh yeah, okay, I've heard of him. Yeah,
especially if you're interested in animation and character work. Bob is brilliant. In fact, just a little cross promotion for Bob is his website is bobbergen.com, and I believe he is planning a voiceover cruise.
Yeah, he's done that, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, I think this will be his second voiceover cruise. I was on the first one, which was 2004.
Okay.
And he's got another one coming up, which I think is going to be in January of next year.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a 5-day cruise to Mexico and back. Leaves out of LA. Very
nice. Very cool. Totally spaced what I was going to say there. What my point was in taking the value of taking workshops is I've been fortunate in the sense that I know that I can trace some benefit to my career to each workshop that I've taken. You know, I've always made the investment back. Let's put it that way. After taking a workshop, there's always been something that I've been able to do that has justified taking that workshop and then some. So, yeah. And I've said this in other things about in other episodes of the podcast. You know, there is a lot of free information out there, but really, you can't do it all for free. You really need to invest in yourself. And really, if you're investing in yourself, what better investment can you make? If that's the way I've looked at it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
So,
well, plus not only that, but when you take a workshop, and I'm not talking about online workshops, I'm talking about when you actually physically attend a workshop where you're working one-on-one with an experienced coach like Rodney Salisbury or Pat Fraley or Bob Bergen or Deb Monroe or any number of other very experienced and qualified pros. Joe Cipriano is even teaching workshops now. So, I mean, these are some of the top guys in the business, and to have the opportunity to actually work with them and be coached by them and absorb some of their experience and wisdom and insights and some of the nuances and things that they will teach you.
Oh,
it's priceless.
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget being at a workshop with Pat, and he had Rob Paulson in the studio. And I was just telling somebody this story the other day, and there was this one thing where two characters were playing off each other, and Rob was in there, recording with us. And so somebody asked his character a question, and rather just sort of said, I don't know, I don't care. He kind of went, I don't know. And it's just that the little sniff or something, but it conveys so much. And I'll never forget that. I was just standing there going, oh my gosh, he didn't just say it. He made you feel it. Based on the, that went
along. And that gets back to what I was talking about earlier with character has precedence over the copy.
Right.
It's the nuance of the character is what brings life to the character. It's not the words.
Right. But I'll never forget that. I was like, wow, that was such a teachable moment. Just that, a sniff. I live in Boston. To go all the way to LA to watch somebody sniff at the right time on a microphone? Come on. But I mean, that was years ago, and it made such a huge impression. And what it did was it gave you license to try other things.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway.
And that was one of the great things about the voice conventions. Pat Fraley was our keynote speaker for every single voice convention.
Oh, wow.
It was our opening keynote for all 5 conventions.
Wow.
And he would always tell me that, okay, I've got something really special for the next convention. And I said, okay, Pat, cool. What is it? He says, I can't tell you. You'll find out at the convention. Penny and I were producing these things. We got to kind of have our fingers in all the aspects of this, and he won't tell us who he's bringing. Oh. So at 2010, he brought Brad Garrett.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've done work with him.
So here I am. I'm sitting up on stage, and to my left is Brad Garrett, and we're playing dialogue on this thing, and Pat's directing.
Yeah. And
then at 2014, he brought in Ed Asner.
Yeah.
And so, I'm doing dialogue with Ed Asner. I'm playing with this. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
But, having Pat as the keynote, he always brought in a program that was just absolute killer.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, James, this has been an absolute treat for me, and I know our listeners are going to get an awful lot out of it. And we will put links to your websites and other resources that you've mentioned throughout our conversation today. But really, it's been an honor to speak with you and have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. This has been loads of fun.
Good. Well, maybe we can do it again sometime real soon.
I would love it. I would absolutely love it. Maybe when the book comes out.
Sounds good. We'll definitely do that.
We can talk about the new stuff that's in the book, because we never really got to that part of things. And,
okay.
And I'm making some changes in the structure and a number of other things about the book. But
all right,
we can get into that another time, perhaps.
That sounds good. All right, James. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, John.
Our program originates in the Boston studios. We hope you'll join us again. Until then, we bid you au revoir, keep your chin up, and the best of luck.
Well, that's it for this episode of the VoiceOver Marketing Podcast. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com so you'll get notices of new episodes, and please share it with your friends and colleagues in the voiceover world. Also, it would be a huge help if you'd like this podcast and rate it on iTunes to help keep it near the top of the list. Feel free to share your comments and questions about this episode and future topics you'd like discussed at voiceovermarketingpodcast.com. And if you'd like more information on one-on-one coaching with me and mastermind group opportunities where we focus on growing your business, feel free to drop me a line at my cyber assistant's email address at mike@johnmelly.com. Thanks for listening. Now go out there and share your voice with the world.